Hi, Gigi Berardi of FoodWISE, recording on this beautiful, sunny, not so sunny afternoon. It was 37 degrees and raining in my part of the world in northwestern Washington on January 24th today. So I wanted to talk to you about USDA food guidelines, dietary guidelines, which have just come out. They are the dietary guidelines for Americans 2020 to 2025. And I thought you might be interested in how they stack up to Gigi Berardi's Food Wise guidelines. It used to be that the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture dietary guidelines talked about big benefits in consuming fats. Now, this was around the turn of the last century. Now, saturated fat is widely criticized. You know that I am not in that league, though. Um, the newest guidelines, dietary guidelines for Americans 2020 to 2025, make every bite count, are no exception to the long-standing attitude and behavior of demonizing fat, at least in the past 100 years or so, maybe a little less. I think people were still eating fat during World War II. How do the USDA guidelines and my FoodWise guidelines stack up? Well, they are similar in one important way, and that is we all think make every bite count is important. So, what do the USDA guidelines say? Focus on early infant child feeding, focus on nutrient dense foods and beverages, and think about calories too, and limit foods and beverages high in added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium, as well as alcohol. So, that's it. Well, we can agree to disagree on the fats and on our definition of nutrient dense. Theirs is nutrient dense foods are foods with vitamins and minerals and with little sugar, saturated fat, and sodium. Mine, foods with fat and protein macronutrients, also rich in vitamins and minerals. So I would use the word whole for how they're using the word nutrient dense, but I digress. So, what are the FoodWise guidelines? If you've been following me in this series or reading the book, you know. But fats. Eat a variety, but don't skip on saturated fat because saturated fat is so satiating. It makes us feel full. Sweet naturally. And one of my recipes, pear almond pudding, is a good example of that natural sweetness. Carbohydrates, make them fibrous, as in my vegetarian chili recipe, and use a variety of flavors and taste. And the example I like to give that's from the book is a Roquefort and Apple Omelet. So, keeping in mind that guidelines are meant to be advisory and helpful, I want to focus on whole just a little bit because so many foods masquerade as whole, like crunchy vegetable chips or protein bars. So, whole generally means minimal processing. If little is taken away and nothing is added, the food is still functionally whole in terms of nutrients. This means choosing whole grains rather than refined flours, fish and pasture fed livestock, and dishes that are rich in fruits, vegetable, and beans. So these are foods that have not been processed in ways that change their natural or innate qualities. So flour has not been bleached, spices have not been irradiated, nothing has been taken away, and nothing has been added. But what about whole grains? I'll use the example of bread. What is whole grain bread. It's edible yeast plus edible whole grain flour. That's what makes whole food bread. Okay, a little water, maybe a little salt. Remember, there's nothing like the personal experience of having dived wholeheartedly into several diets, heavy on processed and low on whole foods, to be serially disappointed in not being able to lose weight. So, whole foods are key. There are other whole grains, barley, as in barley soup, millet, which is used in the United States as bird seed, okay, but this is also very tasty, cooked up with cheeses or meats, brown rice, and steel cut oats. These are easy to find. I admit I am mostly a fan of the oats, but you might be braver than me. And I have an example here of um, the whole grain oats. If you can see, now they have been milled some. Here is the package. I bought them in bulk, and yes, they are in plastic. This is the Red Mill Quick Cooking Steel Cut Oats, and they have been milled to make them quick cooking, but you don't have to, and neither do I. And oftentimes I don't buy the quick cooking variety. I also have an example here of flaxseed meal, also lightly milled. Okay, so that is the whole food discussion for today. And if you want recipes, just go to ggberardi.com.